Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah, and I'm kind of a phenomenon. I don't mean that I have a bright appearance or I can do something outstanding, but people really come to look at me as some mythical thing. It's because I'm studying in a school for boys. My parents are both teachers. My mom is a biology teacher, and my dad is a history teacher. He also has some experience in excavations. Both of them are really cool ones. They're professionals, but they had to work in ordinary school without great salary, but they had no choice. I was really proud of my parents, and I worried that no one in the class cared about them. My classmates preferred to do anything except lessons, and I couldn't even blame them. I was the same. But for my parents, I tried to study well, not to spoil their reputation. And it happened so that my level of knowledge was a little best one. Honestly, I didn't study so hard. I never tried to be the first and the best in everything. It just happened so. It's difficult to forget anything when different topics for lessons are repeated every day. And on weekends, professors and scientists gather in the living room to discuss important scientific topics. So there was not almost success in my academic performance. For example, I was bad at math, and I could understand physics as a ringworm could. I just couldn't. But cramming helped me, and my GPA didn't suffer from my humanitarian grade. Probably everything would remain as was. Parents would teach and spend their energy on those who didn't need biology or history. And I would graduate from school with the best marks and would enter some local university to continue my parents' things. But life decided that would be too boring. In our small town, a very rich man decided to open a school for his son. Like, really, for his son. He had never even tried to talk about charity or anything. Well, if there's money, there is no problems for anybody. And the person was really rich and with certain abilities. He wanted not an ordinary school, but the most luxurious. The only disadvantage, although not even a disadvantage, just a feature, they recruited only clever guys. Something like a closed boarding school for boys. The future elite of the city. And even PF the country. It was impossible to get there for money. Only after entering test and on accusations of sexism, the owner of the school sent everyone to Old English institutions, where the practice of separate education was the norm. My parents were offered a job at this school. The conditions were simply fabulous. The only salary per month was equal to that they received in a normal school for a year. Plus, there were regular seminars with famous people and scientific work. For my mother, there was allocated a laboratory. I was invited to the school as a bait to make sure they agreed, and at the same time to please the journalists. Let me remind you, I am a girl, completely ordinary one. But the parents were told that such a smart child, even who wasn't a boy, was worthy of the best education. So I was the only girl in a closed boarding school for boys. However, they made me several forced differences. So, to build a toilet for girls for one girl was unreasonable. I was given the keys to the teacher's secret room. They didn't take me to boarding school for the same reason. Every morning, my parents and I went to school together. They were there for working and me for studying. There were problems with the locker room too, but the teacher's section was the rescue. The coach's room, we had a woman teacher on PE, so it was easy then with the toilet problem. And they didn't pay much attention to me in other things. Even my clothes was like a male pattern, to not confuse anybody. To say that I was a star in my first year is to say nothing. The first 6 months, they had been staring at me, but then their nature came out. Seriously, I have never received so many compliments in my life. My parents even began to seriously worry about me and my mental comfort. Then they got used to it. Although, yeah, the boys came to me with proposals to date or even rougher things. But I learned to ignore all this because I was a smart girl. And I knew that any scandal would just send me back to the old school. And boarding school was really cool. Horse riding, natural research, a gorgeous lab, Students were even allowed to conduct their own experiments in these laboratories, under the supervision of a teacher, of course. But in the previous school, we had only test tubes with dissolved salt and a plastic comb for experiments with electricity. In general, I categorically did not want to lose all this. And almost all the guys were typical nerds. Well, like the classic ones, in stretched sweaters and big glasses. Of course, they were all very smart, even smarter than me. But they didn't cause romantic feelings. And the son of the school owner and his company did not look at me. And, what is strange, they actually studied. So they also did not have time for silly things. The most difficult thing for me at school was the holidays. It was because I was the only girl, and for some reason, the dances were not canceled from the schedule. Imagine a crowd of guys and I'm in a princess dress. Technically, this is a real dream, but in practice, trampled feet, fatigued, and the desire to disappear from the hall may be with a portal to hell. And on Valentine's Day, there was a huge fail. 300 students sent me Valentines, but this is still half the trouble, although our postman doesn't think so. The other half was the same 300 guys I had to write and answer to. 300 Valentines with the same signature. These same torture can be. And there should be no differences, or they will quarrel. That was the first time I realized that I was totally against a classic wedding. When my cousin got married, she didn't say what it was like to send out a bunch of invitations signed with her own hands. And in my opinion, it was just worth telling future generations about it. Valentine's to all the students of my school put everything in its place. Have you ever tried to buy 300 Christmas gifts? It's good that the headmaster helped me and gave my parents an extraordinary bonus. Otherwise, they would go broke. And you can't give nothing to them. They will always be those who are offended and accusing. And this is a bad atmosphere for studying. And again, the risk of expulsion. The funny thing is that my friends were jealous. Probably from the outside, it really looked like a teenage girl's dream. Well, lots of guys in love and all that. And every time I complained, I was reminded that others didn't have that kind of joy. Aha! Joy! I'd be glad if I didn't get it at all. But all those dances, Valentines, and other things turned out to be stuff. Because something happened in my life that didn't prepare me for it. I fell in love. First love. Yeah, everything's fine. The guy I liked was for dating too. Even too much to imagine. It was his only chance to date a girl for the next 2 years. And secondly, 90% of the school wanted to meet me. But the tragedy came from where we did not expect. The son of the school owner didn't like our relationship. Ben had never even looked at me before, and then wanted to, well, let's be honest, like a toy. Like, if I'm the most important guy there, then the girl is also mine, and it doesn't matter that I don't need her at all. The conflict of interest, yeah. My attitude to Ben was normal. He was really smart and a sensible guy. If you do not think about the fact that he was decently spoiled. I didn't want to fight, but Ben began to show unhealthy interest in me, literally as his property, and provoked a conflict with my boyfriend. Yeah, such that he was literally bulled from scratch. And I became extremely uncomfortable studying and just being on the same school area. It's nothing that my lover suffered because of me and my feelings. But they also put pressure on me to make a choice in favor of Ben. It got to the point that his friends just chased me, caught me in the corridors, and tormented me to choose. I was very scared. Of course, I believed that they would not go too far, but just the absence of personal space was enough for me. It's uncomfortable to feel yourself like a thing, though valuable, but a prize. I began to learn less, look around, and act really paranoid. Naturally, all this news quickly reached the teachers, my parents, and the school owner himself. And since his son was involved in the case, which is not guilty of anything anyway, even if it's not true, he decided to intervene. We, or rather me and my boyfriend, were given a choice: to study peacefully or leave. The guy decided to stay anyway. He was promised that they would leave him alone and even give him some business like an internship in Europe. I do not blame him. This was his choice, and most likely the right one, because teenagers' relationships end in a short time, and the future must be built now. I chose to leave. This whole story was the last piece of my patience, and it became clear to me that in any case, I would not finish my studies normally. There is no place for a girl in a boys' school, even in the best one. In addition, there were only 2 years left until university, and I could be patient. My decision was treated with respect. They even praised me for my honesty. I was transferred to the best school in the city, without exams, of course. There weren't equestrian sports or laboratories in it, but they taught me well, and the most important thing was that the classes were completely ordinary, mixed ones, and it was really cool. My parents stayed to teach at the boarding school. At first, they wanted to leave after me, but the director and I talked them out of it, because it's stupid to lose such opportunities for science and improvement and big money. Yeah, I received my scholarship and study grant by myself, with my knowledge and points. At the same time, I set an example for ordinary children who don't have the opportunity to study in an elite closed school. It's not about the place of study, but about desire and patience and brains. If this is not the case, then no teachers will put knowledge in your head. Now, I'm studying at the best university in the country, and I do not regret it. Closed school for boys was an interesting experience. It taught me a lot, but as much as I was happy to get there, I was just as happy to be back in real life.
Howdy, I'm Nancy, and recently I learned that you can't just trust people, any people at all. You see, even those who appear to like you can plot something sinister and laugh behind your back. My story started when I got invited to study at the most prestigious school in our city. That school doesn't usually take in students from outside. It caters to the rich and wealthy, and people there have to pay a fortune for their kids to be allowed to study. However, the teachers are professionals of the highest caliber. Besides, the school alumni are allowed to enter practically any state university without exams. And I was just a girl from a trailer park. I've studied in public schools all my life and was never considered a star pupil, despite being quite diligent. I just wasn't all that smart. Besides, my mom and I never had much money to begin with. Sometimes we barely had enough to buy groceries. I've got the very best mom in the whole world. She's just kinda unlucky in life, but she works a lot and she devotes all her strength to making my future brighter, even if just a little bit. So, when the officials from the super school hired her as a janitor, she considered herself blessed because Mom's new job was actually really good for my future. School employees were allowed to get their own kids enlisted in that school free of charge. That's how me, a janitor's daughter, came to study at the very best school in the whole state. It felt like a dream come true. At first, Mom and I were super happy. With such an education, I'd be able to enter any university. Marvelous. Of course, there already was one problem. I was quite afraid of my new classmates, you see. I was worried that they definitely hate me and immediately start bullying me for being a classless upstart or some such hogwash. Still, I was ready to endure anything for that bright future. It's a good thing that I went because it turned out I was wrong. I guess rich kids are no different than actual kids from poor families. Nobody bullied me, nobody hated me, they just kind of ignored me altogether at first. I wasn't really offended, though. Kids in any school do a lot of watching at first when they get a new classmate. Besides, I looked and honestly sounded so different from all of them. I've got old clothes, a funny voice, patched shoes, Mom's old bag, nothing nice and fancy. I clearly looked out of their league. But then a miracle happened. I had just gotten used to being an outcast and all, but those rich kids appeared to be actually kind of cool. Some of them started talking to me as an equal. First, it was the girls, and then the boys welcomed me into the fold. They helped me get comfortable at school. 2 of the girls actually tutored me, and my classmates even gave me free rides home. Though I didn't tell them my real address. I told them to drive to the house closest to the trailer park, but still, it was great. With time, more and more miracles happened. Those two girls I became really close friends with, and they even started gifting me their clothes. At first, I was embarrassed. I thought maybe they were mocking me. But they soon persuaded me that they didn't need these clothes anyway. The boots that didn't fit, the coats that weren't fancy enough, that sort of thing. They gave me jackets, boots, dresses, even several sets of the school uniform. Well, at first, I expected some sort of trick. Yet, they actually managed to convince me that they were sincere. You see, all those clothes and boots weren't actually new. Some of them were a bit shabby or blotchy. Rich fashionista girls considered them irreparable. But hey, for me it was an easy fix, and I was happy to wear it. The guys gave me some presents as well. Of course, they never gave me, like, clothes or beauty products or whatever. Instead, they clubbed together and bought me a high-end phone, a laptop for studies, and some other accessories like headphones and stuff. The girls taught me how to wear makeup, gave me an opportunity to try many various hairstyles, even invited me to a pajama party where the mother of one of the girls dyed my hair ash blonde and gave me a really cool new haircut. Later on, I found out that mom was actually a fashionable stylist who only worked with stars and was regularly employed in Hollywood. My life became glorious. I could have never imagined it to turn out that great. Of course, Mom warned me not to be too charmed by my new friends. But, how could I help it? Well, sooner or later, every fairy tale has to end. On this particular day, I came to school a bit earlier than usual. Mom and I normally do that because we come to school by bus, so I was usually the first kid to enter the classroom. Typically, I was there about a half hour before the start of the lesson. I often did that time to review work or go over homework or that sort of stuff. But that time, I decided to help Mom by watering the flowers. So when the girls came to class, I was busy watering the pots behind a closet, effectively hidden from their sight. So they didn't hear me when I heard them enter the classroom. And at first I wanted to greet them, but was stopped dead in my tracks when I heard what they were talking about. I heard my name come up. They didn't see me and thought that I was absent, and they were actually happy that the nightmare girl skipped school. They were calling me names and insulting me. I was so shocked that I couldn't even move, and they continued with their incoherent ramblings. It turned out that my so-called friends considered me a boogeyman, boogie woman, whatever, of the class. According to them, I was an ugly, clumsy, foul-looking monster of a girl, and even makeup and nice clothes made no difference. They were sure that I was the shame of the class. Turns out that they played the role of my friend so that I couldn't embarrass them anymore, and that they were purposefully working to keep me silent. I couldn't really listen to those cruel words anymore and ran away in tears. I cried in that closet for hours. I'm not too proud of that. And then Mom came and took me home. That very evening, I begged Mom to move me to another school. I never, ever return to that horrible super school. Even now, when I don't feel all that pain anymore, I still can't understand their reasons. I truly believed us to be friends, and they turned out to be nothing more than a group of malevolent assholes.
Hi all, I'm Barbara, the same rich beauty who, according to the cries of our janitor, ruined Nancy's life. Pfft, that Nancy. My parents always told me that the rich were rich and the poor were poor for a reason, and used to think that all men are equal. I thought so until I met Nancy. When Nancy got transferred to our class, all of us were shocked. You see, we were all somehow acquainted since our very childhood. All of the pupils in our school, from the first graders to the almost alumni. And she looked and smelled. And she looked and smelled as a literal alien to us. It totally isn't an exaggeration. She really was so weird. Makeup today is affordable even for the most poor. And if it isn't, then a sewing needle definitely is. Nancy's clothes were full of holes. She wore zero makeup. She clearly didn't have her head washed for weeks, and she smelled. Our class soon became the laughingstock of the whole school. Still, we tried our best to turn our nightmare girl into a normal-looking creature. I actually never liked her, but Mom always told me that real ladies shouldn't instantly make up their minds. They should weigh out all the pros and cons first. So we tried. Some of us thought that Nancy should have been at least smart if she was unkempt and ugly. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't the case. She studied diligently, yet she read no books and wasn't interested in any extra knowledge. She was a literal zero, a nobody, and an ugly one at that. The girls of our class, me included, decided to help the nightmare girl. We tried to teach her how to dress better, teach her style and makeup. We even gifted her with clothes and cosmetics of our own. Our parents encouraged our efforts, yet my mom told me not to be too hopeful. Well, Mom was right. Our little nightmare never actually changed. She wore new clothes and new makeup, but somehow remained the same old nightmare, based, ugly, and stupid. All the school was laughing at us. So finally there came the moment when we stopped caring altogether. We gave up and made Nancy the clown everybody was calling her to be. Funny thing is, she was all for it, and we were surprised by that. She saw how we looked. She read all the fashion magazines. She listened to our advice for many months. And still, she was sure that jeans together with a skirt was an okay move, and that she would look good with blue lashes. Was that some exquisite stupidity? Was that some extremely bad taste? I don't know. And then the day came when she learned about everything. Her face looked horrific. We even thought that she was going to take her revenge at us. Well, she didn't, and that was the end of the story. The nightmare girl finally understood that she didn't belong here and moved to another school all on her own accord. And we were free to live a normal life once again. All in all, that's what a happy ending looks like in my book. Hello, my name's Diana. This is my creepy school story. How my mistake almost made me a victim of my crazy teacher. Never repeat it. For some reason, messengers weren't that popular in our school. We communicated in the old way, with notes on sheets that were tossed to each other. It may not be really up to date, but we all liked it. It was kinda warm for us. I don't know. We collected really cool lines in a separate notebook. Our class wanted to add these notes to the graduation album, just as a memory. So when it came to me to telling my boyfriend I loved him, I didn't think much. I dashed a note with hearts and threw the little plane into his shaggy top. Who knew? Anyway, I wasn't that good of aerodynamics. The note didn't fall on the guy's desk, as I had hoped, but it got right onto my teacher's back. He was writing something on the board. For you to understand how crooked my hands were, the guy was sitting one desk closer to the board, 3 rows away from me, and the note flew just straight. Anyway, my plain note, with hearts and love confession, was in our chemistry teacher's hands. I'd say he was like a dried fruit. He was old, naughty, and always stinking with something between fume and gunpowder. Anyway, I wouldn't advise you to stand next to him. I was happy I didn't sign the note. Well, I'm not so smart. Yeah. And I didn't guess he knew all our handwriting for 5 years of working with our class like a professional graphologist. The teacher picked up the note and put it in his pocket without looking at it. He only hissed something, spitting on the first rows. Nothing special happened that time. But later, I started noticing Mr. Semsey treated me in a really strange way. Well, that is, he was never adequate. But with me, he became looser in the beans. No, he didn't do anything bad though. I don't even know how to explain it. At first, they were just glances. Girls will understand this. You know the feeling when someone strips you with his eyes? Just imagine that obscenity is made by your old and nasty teacher. And from the side, it seemed like nothing happened. But I felt it. And I didn't understand what it was. Senility or something was wrong with me. And then it got a lot worse. He started to leave me after classes, like on business, but regularly. My teacher told me something about my talent for chemistry, though I didn't have any. and that he was ready to teach me everything he knew. At the time, he put his hands in the wrong places on my body each time. But again, I had nothing I could present to him. Well, he stroked my head. Well, put his hand on my shoulder. But still, it was disgusting. It seemed to me he was chasing me. I always felt this terrible smell near me. It could belong only to my teacher. And honestly, I started to bother about the situation. It dawned on me when Mr. Senzit brought my boyfriend to almost school expulsion for some nonsense because we were kissing each other in the hallway during the break. And no, it's not my imagination. He personally told me this, saying that I either would completely devote myself to science and my genius, or spend my life on all sorts of nonsense with my stupid peers. That's where I burst up. When I asked why I should fall at his old feet, he showed me, ta-dam, my note. I almost bent over in shame, and understanding my trick became, this. I just didn't know what to do. Refusing him would spell doom for my academic performance, and accepting his proposal, well, it would be better to just switch schools and forever forget about the whole ordeal. On my side was only that he was really of a decent age, and it wouldn't go further than chemistry classes and, maximum, stroking my shoulder. But it was exactly this that stopped me from complaining to the principal. And this note, in fact, I myself was the first to flirt with him. Any attorney would confirm this, even if it wasn't like this at all. Anyway, on facing the most difficult dilemma in my life, I chose science. Yeah, I decided my teacher's special attitude would help me with my studies, and if not, then I would have extra private classes. Free ones. This was the dream of any smart person. My boyfriend and me had to split up, though. He still didn't understand my genial move, but I didn't expect Mr. Semzit would believe in my false love declaration so much he wouldn't pity me or his career. Day by day, I found myself in a bigger trap than before, because his strokes became more and more frank, and I was no longer happy at all. I didn't know how to say that the note was simply an unsuccessful love admission to my boyfriend, not to an elderly teacher. I just didn't know what to do because my academic performance was at stake. And on the other side of the balance, there was my honor and psyche. As a result, not being brave enough just to talk to him, I didn't come up with anything better than to go to the principal and complain about the teacher's behavior. I don't know if they believed me or simply took advantage of what I said, but almost the next day, Mr. Semzit was fired. To be closer, he seemed to just retire. But in the middle of the school year, even the first graders didn't believe this. Since then, only one thought that he's been spinning in my head. It's my fault. If it hadn't been for the stupid note, if I hadn't been a little braver, if I don't have enough courage to find everything out directly, but I asked my friends. Mr. Semzit never left home after being fired. He seemed to be going crazy from loneliness because he had nothing but school in his life.
Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Semzite, and I was Diana's chemistry teacher before the incident. And the situation isn't that simple. You see, I'm 71, and my life now resembles a nightmare. I've lost my job, I have no friends or family to speak of, I've got no savings. All I've got now is a minuscule pension, no future, and no hope. I became a teacher when I was young and naive. I really wanted to help kids, to bring them up, to show them scientific miracles. Boy, how I was mistaken. To think that one girl's unjustified complaint would be enough to ruin me completely. Quite sad, actually. The kids in our school were always into that secret note stuff. We teachers didn't mind. Some of us still yelled at those pupils who spent their time writing notes to each other instead of studying, but even those were pretty much used to it. So when the girl's paper airplane flew into my back, I wasn't too surprised. But then I read the note, and everything changed. Be assured, I had zero romantic feelings for the girl. I just wanted to save her from herself. You see, Diana was a really smart and talented kid, but the guy she fell in love with was a jock, in the worst sense of the word. Not a talented sportsman by far, not a gifted boy, nothing, but a spoiled kid with an inflated ego. I agree, Diana's personal life was her own business. It was bad for me to even try to influence her. Still, I felt that I had to try to save her from herself. Soon, Diana became one of my star pupils. She attended my additional classes and proved herself a talented chemist. Funny thing is, we were never alone. My chemistry lab was an open space of sorts, divided by partitions into several cabinets. There were always some kids there, my other star pupils, and I gave equal care and attention to all of them. Unfortunately, I didn't take into account Diana's romantic obsession. Now, she had no boyfriend to dote on, so she needed some target for her feelings. I don't really know why she chose me, an old teacher. Sad thing is, I was too old to properly identify her feelings, and that cost me my career. Guess at one point her fantasies became too much for her, but instead of talking about her problems with her school therapist, with her friends, or even with me, she decided to immediately reach out to our headmaster. And at that point, my life was ruined. Don't really know whether the headmaster believed her story or not. No matter what he thought, he had to do something. And he was too busy to conduct an inquiry. The officials just ordered me to quit. Otherwise, they'd tell the whole city that I was a lecher and a molester. That's how it ended. My illustrious career, my achievements, my experience were all destroyed by one girl's false claim. Funny thing is, people in our city still made their own assumptions on the matter. And now I've lost all my friends because of that. No one actually convicted me guilty, but everyone's somehow sure that I'm a fiend. I can't possibly find a job now. No one would take a person with such a reputation as a teacher, and I'm too old to learn another trade's tricks. Of course, I always can retire, but retired teachers get very little money. I can't even afford to pay for my rent anymore. My only future consists of several more years at a free shelter for elderly people. I've got nowhere else to move to. Still, I can't understand why everyone was so eager to believe Diana's words. I can't believe that everything I did during my whole life was in vain. Guess I should have focused on making a family of my own and raising my own kids instead of trying to help the world. Unfortunately, it's already too late. Now I spend the majority of my time at home. I just sit in my old, rickety chair and wait for the Grim Reaper to take me, or for the landlord to come and kick me out of my house. Whoever comes first, I don't really care. I hold no ill will towards Diana. She's still a kid, after all. I only hope she won't make any similar mistakes ever again.
Hey guys, my name's Anna. I want to tell you a story. I would say not all people deserve our help, even if such a person is close to you, because easy come, easy go. And sometimes hell is paved with good intentions. And this was in my case. Our parents have 2 kids, me and my sister Janet. We're identical twins who are 100% alike. Well, twins can be rarely distinguished from each other, but even our parents constantly confused us until they guessed to dress us differently, at least. However, they didn't prevent us from trolling others by simply changing our clothes. It happened that, despite our resembling appearances, our characters were totally different. I'm quite a homely person. It's a terrible stress for me to go out somewhere. I just hate noisy parties and company. In my free time, I'm studying more and reading books, because I think that a mind is the girl's best decoration. But Janet got the rest of the things. She is a very cheerful, sociable, and open girl who has some problems with self-control. Janet is responsible for the adventures in our family, Or rather, she creates them herself. For her, it's not a problem to get out of the window of our bedroom on the first floor, jumping down and running away to the night party, where her parents didn't control her. In the morning, she would climb back using some wonderful ninja acrobatic techniques. Janet never liked to study. She thought that books are very boring and far from reality. In plain words, I'm a theorist in our family, and she is a classic practitioner who grabs the knowledge only from her personal experience. But despite these differences, she has always been, and she would remain my favorite sister, and I willingly help her in all her pranks. So during her illegal escapes from our home, my task was to cover for her. If our parents came in our room, I pretended to be asleep. I changed into Janet's pajamas and pretended to be her. My parents believed that. They always believed, even when I personally thought that a failure was about to happen. Well, if it was so easy with parents, what was there to worry about when we played over others? We've never been caught cheating, even when we revealed who's who ourselves. However, this was not always helpful. Once there was a big failure, and we then laughed about it for a long time. It happened that Janet had quite a lot of guys. She met them for one evening and then disappeared. And for some reason, she found another guy right in our school. We were already in high school. We were adults, but he was from another class. And he didn't know there was two of us. So he started hitting on me. When I told him in plain text, I had no idea who he was. He started calling me bad names, saying he immediately realized what kind of girl I was. And I stood there listening to that, thinking this time I would definitely bury Janet alive. I tried to explain I had a twin sister and that he probably saw her, but he didn't believe me. He even threatened me. And this nightmare continued until Janet approached me. I don't know what that guy thought at that time, but he was running away from there, leaving hot traces. And Janet promised me not to mess with anyone who might stumble on me, and switched to the older guys. This, of course, was a serious disadvantage from our resemblance, though we managed to turn it into an advantage somehow. So when I liked the guy, Janet picked him up. Well, I went on the dates, and the guy didn't even have an idea about the substitution, though he was surprised a little. He thought I was more open the first time we met. I said that's because I feel nervous. We dated for about 6 months, until I finally realized it wasn't exactly what I needed. But the most important advantage was in another thing. Confusing guys, parents, relatives. Yeah, it's fun, of course, but that's it. We played the most profitable scams right at school, where we changed and passed exams for each other. I was good at science, and Janet was almost like a professional athlete, and she drew well. There were 2 students in our class who were best in sports, Janet and me, but no one guessed that me was also Janet, who just came running with a result slightly worse. We were kidding. Anyway, our system was debugged to perfection, and we tested it at various school events. Therefore, when we started to think about our future education, I was not surprised at all when Janet asked me to help her with the entrance exams. I was surprised by something else. I mean, her desire to go to medical school. Well, it's because you have to study there hard, cramming all the time. And Janet and grinding never go together, ever. I chose the linguistic college myself, and I was very proud of it. But I also accepted my sister's wish, especially when she explained she wanted a good future for herself and promised to continue studying strictly on her own. So I passed the entrance exams, pretending to be her with no worries. I scored enough points for my sister to get a scholarship. Then she planned on joining college sports teams in case she didn't make it through her studies. By the way, her studies were quite okay at the beginning. Janet crammed hard. She sat over her books in the evenings, trying to make up for what she had missed at school. Sometimes she even asked for help, and that was like a defeat for her. Usually, she never tried to learn for herself what she didn't understand. She gave up and that's it. And here, I could see the desire to really study hard and strive for something. Our parents were really happy and almost jumped to the ceiling from joy, telling everyone who wanted to listen to them that finally both their daughters had pulled themselves together and would soon become decent members of society. And then they gave me and Janet a car. Well, used, of course. But they were our own cars, and I was just pleased to see that now my sister also shares my passion for studying, and she doesn't dissuade me as before with phrases kinda like, "Time to have fun while we're still young." Since we studied at different colleges, I only knew about her success through report cards and her own stories. Well, at some point, I just didn't have time for any tracking. Because I was busy too. My things went hard. I studied on a scholarship and had to keep a good grade point average, not to lose everything. Things were strict with this one. If you stop being on time and fall behind, then you can be expelled. But what is even worse, you can be imposed a fine or a compensation. And this was an extremely large amount. Anyway, I didn't care about the world around me. As it turned out, in vain. We made it to the second year, going really hard and having a couple of nervous breakdowns. But then, if I knew this would end, I would have refused to help Janet in her admission at the very beginning. Because she killed a man. I mean, really. They had a practice at the hospital. No, of course. During the second year, no one let the students do something serious. Make an injection, bandage, or collect a clinical record. Something more difficult was later, at the qualification stage. But as it turned out, without knowledge, sometimes even such a trifle as a trivial injection is enough to deprive a person of life. I have no idea what she was thinking of, but clearly she didn't think with her brains. When she was asked to deliver the injection, she didn't even look at the patient's records. She had no time. She was talking on the phone with her new friend. And just out of her carelessness, she delivered the prescribed medication to the wrong person. I mean, you know, right? She did not accidentally mix up the medications, but she mixed up people to make things even worse. Seems like what terrible thing may happen from a simple antibiotic injection. But as ill luck would have it, this particular patient was allergic to the antibiotics of a certain group, as was mentioned in his medical record and on a bracelet on his hand. But this isn't the worst thing. Much worse. Instead of helping the patient, my sister got blunt confused and just watched the man dying in agony. She didn't even call the nurse. Anyway, then there was a trial where it became clear that Janet was going to face not only expulsion, but a legal punishment. But the case with the prison was somehow hushed up. There was something about the fact that students shouldn't be left unattended. In that moment, there was no doctor or even a nurse next to Janet. It was kind of a safety regulation violation. But the college administration didn't hush up the case and decided to test my sister for knowledge. She ran to me for help, but no, I'm a perfectly normal, healthy person. How could I agree after such shocking news? First of all, it was the second year, and it was not like the entrance exams based on a school program, and I knew zero about medicine. Second, she already killed a man. What would happen next? So, my sister had to get out of it herself, but she totally failed. She couldn't remember anything of the first year. Turned out, from the very first day of college, she found a guy who fell in love with her, and he helped her in everything, including exams. It was easy enough to bypass the system even without my involvement. Just a micro earpiece in her ear and a devoted admirer with the textbooks behind the door. And that was the way she did it. So you want to know the end of the story? Janet started blaming me for her expulsion. Right? Who else to blame for? Not herself, who made up her mind to be engaged in the incredibly responsible studies. And then she happily let it go. She also killed a man because of her ignorance. Of course. The sister is the one to blame who knew nothing of medicine. Honestly, I blame myself too for following her lead, not dissuading her, and not preventing bad things from happening. If I hadn't agreed to take the exams for her at the entrance, none of this would have happened. So it turns out, everything is really my fault. Because of my love for my sister, things are bad for both of us now. I have a bad conscience, and Janet, she left her parents after a terrible scandal. Now sometimes she appears in my life, asks for money, and disappears again for many months. I don't know where she lives or what she does, but I know for sure that I will never agree to help someone to cheat again. No, I wouldn't stand another story like this.
Hi everyone, my name is Helen, and I found myself in the worst possible situation ever, and it's my fault. I can't even blame anyone for this. My parents, neighbors, and all of our relatives think that I'm perfect. They see me as an ideal child who's good at everything. I have great grades, is perfectly well behaved, and I even read at an extremely high grade level. I heard my neighbor sobbing over her daughter who ran away from home at the age of 16. That's the same age as me, and honestly, I rarely even go out for walks anymore. Certainly, such a perfect girl like me wouldn't have any issues at school, right? That's why my report card shines with straight A's and sings with praises from all of my teachers. It's the only way things could be, right? Well, every morning I wake up, have my breakfast, help my mother to clean the table, and run to school. The bus station is situated about 2 blocks from my house, so I have to leave 10 minutes early so that the bus driver doesn't have to wait up for me. Every day, my father offers me a ride, but I always say no because I know that he could be late for work. Everybody envies my parents. I'm a role model for all the other children. That's why they treat me like a disdainful and arrogant queen of our school. Anyway, they all dream about having me as their friend, or at least dream about cheating off of my papers. But my whole life is a lie, or at least the last year of it is. The truth is that I'm a loser. An idiot who can't do anything useful or even honestly confess to this. And what's worse, and ultimately terrible, is that any lie sooner or later will get exposed, and I can't keep up this deception for much longer. At the beginning of this year, several unpleasant events happened all at once. Everything began after my classmates framed me in the worst possible way. The teacher was going to give us a test just after the vacation in order to check whether we still remembered anything. It was the boys who came up with the idea to steal the correct answers instead of actually revising and studying our work. Our science teacher always kept the papers with the correct answers in his desk, so it didn't seem very difficult to steal them. All we needed to do was stay in the room after the class and take a photo of the answers. Seemed to be as easy as pie. The only real problem was that the teacher locked the room between classes. You see, he had some expensive stuff in the cabinet and didn't want the curious students sneaking around. But we all put our heads together and figured out that there were some places under certain desks where the teacher wouldn't be able to see us. All we needed was a couple of people to stay behind, hidden. One of the short kids in our class and myself volunteered for that specific role. The other kids were standing behind the door and watching. The first part of the plan went just right. We hid, waited for the teacher to lock the room, and took a photo. But suddenly, the teacher came bursting back in the room. He immediately rushed to his cabinet with those expensive things I mentioned before. We stood aside quietly, pretending to be lost, but it turns out that one of the reagents was missing. When the teacher was looking through our bags, he found the phone with a photo of the test answers. A huge scandal broke out at school. The school's administration didn't get any dirt on my short partner in crime, so they blamed me for the theft. All my classmates framed me, saying that they didn't see anything and that it was all my own idea. The incident lapsed because there was no evidence. There couldn't have been any, as I didn't take anything, but still they expelled me after the incident. Then I made another huge mistake. I didn't tell my parents anything. They thought that I was still attending school as I usually do, spending time there from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., preparing for my exams and whatnot, but obviously I wasn't. I spent my time in the library or cafes. Sometimes I would just wander the streets where nobody would recognize me. I knew that I should tell the truth, but every time I went to tell them, I would freeze up, and I just ended up spouting stories about what happened in school that day, which were obviously lies. According to these stories, I became the best student and the pride of the entire school. I also forged teacher signatures and made a perfect report card with the best grades. My drawing skills helped me a lot there. My parents were so proud and didn't notice that anything was off. They even started bragging about my progress in front of everyone, and of course, I found myself in a stalemate. I couldn't just stand up and say, "Oh, dear parents and other relatives, I have been lying to you for several months straight. I was actually expelled a long time ago." Isn't that a funny story? Oh, I can just see it now. My mother would be like, "Oh dear, we're so proud that you embarrassed us in front of everyone." No. I could not do that. But as I said, my lie is going to expire soon because the end of the school year is drawing nearer. This is the last high school year, and after that, I should choose what I want to do next. I can continue my school education, or I can go straight to college. As you've already guessed, I wouldn't have any final exams, and after almost a year, my parents will find out everything. I don't know what to do. Yes, I know. I wouldn't have gone through all of this if I was just honest with my parents from the beginning, but I've dug a hole too deep to get back out with my lies. It's too late for that now. My parents will kill me. Or at least they will kick me out of the house because of my uselessness and shame. Please, give me some advice in the comments. What should I do? What would you do? I would really appreciate any ideas.
Hello there, I'm Kate, the mother of this little liar. And yes, parents are not that stupid as their children think. Usually the school's management sends somebody to inform the parents about the exclusion, or they at least send it in the mail, not because of control or something like that, but because the parents should sign the papers. The papers were sent by mail with a delay of about a month after the exclusion. I don't know the exact reason for the delay. Maybe they were too busy. The fact is that we got the message about the exclusion of our daughter from the principal. It's rather interesting that Helen didn't tell us about that. She allegedly kept attending her school, talked about school affairs, and behaved as usual. Imagine our surprise when we got the letter. Unfortunately, nothing could be fixed at that moment. We could apply to some other schools, or try to settle things in this one. Still, the whole month was already missed without a valid reason. Besides, no school will take Helen just a month after the beginning of the school year, so we decided to wait and see what would happen. I know that it was not appropriate, but what could we do? To be honest, we expected Helen to tell the truth and work on her own or find a job. Instead, she preferred to have fun and lie. It was so hard to smile in her face and remain silent. Our own daughter was lying to us with no shame, and it felt awful. Also, those report cards. That was an actual pedagogical failure that went too far. We hoped that at least the unearned adulation would work, and she would tell the truth. But Helen kept lying and pretending that everything was fine. She lied and lied and lied. One lie went after another, and every next one was far more complicated and well considered. After all, I was confused by her made-up stories. We don't know where Helen got those storytelling skills. She was quite good at it. She has never mixed up the dates and the facts. I would be really impressed if it wasn't our daughter who really fooled us. Soon the school year will come to an end, and the exams will begin. My husband and I started to make bets on how it all comes out. Will Helen tell the truth, or maybe she will keep lying? I bet she will definitely make up something new, and my husband tries to be more optimistic. As a matter of fact, we're not going to continue this nonsense. As soon as the exams will end, we'll tell her everything. We've already excluded her opportunities to lie to us again, and we created a punishment for her, the one that she will remember for a long time. It will teach her that studying is the most important thing for a teenager. Don't be afraid, we're not going to do anything awful, but we definitely should teach her a good lesson. My husband found in the papers the most difficult and dirty work for her. She will clean the toilets in cafes the whole summer to refund us all the lunch money she spent. We hope that hard work will help to get her head on straight. And if not, she can always continue to clean the toilets, though it's the most underpaid job without any career opportunities. Hey there, I'm Susan. I would never believe this story if it didn't happen right in front of me. There are lots of people that still hesitate, but I have irrefutable proof now. The point is that my phone conceals horrible truth about our principal. Can you imagine that she's been stealing from kids for years? Nobody could. I found out by accident, by appearing in the right place at the wrong time. We would still quarrel and panic if it wasn't for that tiny coincidence. Our school looked like a jail because one was suspecting another. The aggression level was increasing with every fight, but our principal is in the real jail now. The city was buzzing for some time. Newspapers and local channels were extremely excited. They made a real hero out of me. It is unbelievable that an adult woman, the principal of the whole school, appeared to be a thief, and not a very mysterious one. I'm just glad that everything ended well. Do you want to know how I managed to save everyone? That day, I had a terrible stomachache. We're not supposed to leave the class, especially recently, but the pain was unbearable. I even was ready to be branded as a mysterious school thief for a few years. The point was that somebody from our school started stealing things, and the weirdest part is that he was stealing everything. Things of value, some simple stuff, money, and even cell phones. Everything that someone left unattended was stolen. Even personal things from our lockers were not safe. That felt terrible, because everyone was under suspicion. Seniors attacked freshmen. The latter used to cry and whine, accusing seniors. Children started to walk in groups. In case one would look away, others could watch his stuff. The teachers thought that we were being paranoid, and it was some strange kind of game, but we were not playing. You don't have time for games when you're afraid of being punished by your parents for the missing phone. Finally, the school administration even let the members of our school board watch the security footage. They wanted to prove that in fact nothing was stolen and the videos really showed nothing special, just some lockers, classrooms, and dressing rooms. So we decided that the thief was not an ordinary human. Maybe some ghosts stole our stuff, or it was an assassin who could easily hide from the security cameras. We also stopped going out during classes and walked alone, so nobody could suspect anything. So I was talking about my stomachache. I called in sick and asked my teacher to send somebody with me. I didn't want to be suspected, but she refused and I went to the nurse's office alone, looking around all the time. The nurse examined me, gave me a pill, and sent me to the hospital. She was worried about my stomach and wanted to make sure that everything was fine. So I decided to not wait for the painkiller to work and call my mother right away. I knew that my mom would believe me because I rarely missed my classes pretending to be sick. I was heading towards my locker to put a prescription in there and some things, and I didn't want to bother anyone while calling my mom. Suddenly, I saw something strange. I mean, nobody suspected the adults in those robberies. We couldn't even think about teachers or administrative members stealing our stuff. Seriously? Why do they need that? Children don't have anything valuable, except for a phone or a few dollars. When I turned around the corner, I saw our principal standing near my friend's locker. To be honest, I didn't suspect anything at first. Who knows what she's doing there? But she was obviously doing something wrong. She was trying to pick the lock with the help of some hairpins, and that was not okay. I panicked and screamed loudly. Also, I quickly took my phone out of the bag and turned the camera on. At first, she didn't realize what was going on. That's why when she was standing there with that hairpin in her hands, for at least several seconds, it was enough for everyone to come here. Surely the principal was trying to defend herself. She said that we were stupid teens and knew nothing. How a respectable adult could steal something. But I had the whole school of eyewitnesses, and the videos as well. It was the crucial evidence against her. Everyone could see our principal picking the lock. During her trial, the woman acknowledged that she had been stealing from the students all the time. She even admitted that it was our fault because we didn't keep an eye on our things, and she had full access to all lockers and dressing rooms, so it was not a big deal to open them. Speaking of cameras, she was just turning them off or redirecting them in a different way. That's how I became our local hero. Students admired me. Journalists interviewed me several times. People in the street came near and praised my active citizenship. But I still feel awful. as if Santa with a fake beard came through the door instead of the chimney. I understand everything, but don't want to believe that we were deceived for so long. All of us learned our lesson. Everyone can turn out to be a terrible person, even the one who is least likely to be suspected, even the principal of your own school.
My name is Grace, and I'm the principal of the school everyone is talking about. Or to be more accurate, I was the principal. Kids these days don't have any respect for authority. It's so insulting that one stupid girl ruined my whole life. I lost everything because she thought she saw something, and a crowd of mindless children believed her. I didn't get anything for all my work in return, except for 3 meals a day in jail for the next 5 long years. I worked so hard and didn't have anything else in my life except for my job. It was everything to me. I was trying to earn and save as much money as possible so that I could retire early and enjoy my own life for once. My hard work didn't let me settle down or even have kids of my own. So then one day I was reassigned to this dang school. Everyone who thinks that all principals should be the best pedagogists is so wrong. A principal is just a good manager, or in a perfect world, a financier. One that usually starts his own business, and I was quite the catch for this little school and didn't have any other options. Also, I don't have traditional talent that makes me a successful financier. I don't even like kids, to be honest. I would love my own, I'm pretty sure. But all these screaming and swearing students are awful. I was so annoyed by them that I tried to stay as far away from them as possible. For heaven's sake, my job was to take care of the financial part of the school management and also the delivery of school supplies, not babysit. The assistants were in charge of that. Then that happened. At some point, I realized that I was living my life in vain. All these bratty kids with their expensive cell phones and clothes. They spent money from their parents and never understood the real value of $1. There are not many kids of rich parents here because our city school is quite small and simple. But still, my students managed to live better lives than me. I'm 45 now and don't own a cool, expensive cell phone or stylish clothes. I can't even afford lunch in a fancy cafe like other career women. These snot-nosed kids have all that and even more. Although I noticed they didn't value their stuff at all. Otherwise, they would have kept better track of it, don't you think? At first, I would just get mad, alone in my office. But one day I found only a few dollars were left in my wallet. And it was a whole week until payday. So when I was walking by the dressing room and saw $20 on the ground, I decided I should take it. The bill seemed to be lost by a student, and if a student was so inattentive and lost their money, they probably didn't even need it. Then I took a wallet that was left in the hallway on a windowsill. I pocketed change that was lying on the floor, and an abandoned phone from the dressing room. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but those kids, well, they should have watched their stuff better. Besides, no one suspected the headmistress when they found out that their things were missing. The students were just accusing each other. So I ended up finding the best way to save some cash. At first, as I mentioned, I felt guilty, but the farther it went, the more indifferent I became. I didn't care about the kids' troubles. The school rules say do not take anything of value from other students. And the responsibility for personal belongings lies with students bringing it on campus. It says nothing about teachers taking things or teachers' responsibility. Everything was considered in detail. I even turned off the cameras. If it wasn't for that dang girl that interfered, I could have saved enough money till the end of the school year and then quit. And now I have to face jail time and universal condemnation. I don't deserve any of this. Please do share in the comments your opinions on this story and its characters. Like the video and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to see the next episode.